They have all served us for a long time. I can hardly imagine that they would commit murder. Kinzo-san's life is nearly over, and I hear that the inheritance problem is still very shaky. Add on that about the story about 10 tons of gold being hidden somewhere, a possible payoff like that might be enough to convince certain people to commit a crime. I don't want to think about it, but there's also a chance that the old bastard is running some bizarre occult ceremony. The servants of the One Wing are his pawns. They might have been the ones to carry out the murders. How about Dad anyway? Have we been able to contact him yet? No. The extension line isn't working either. The culprits may have broken it, and Father does sometimes leave the receiver off the hook when he's in a bad mood. When I knocked, I only received a grumpy reply. We can't contact him, but that study is well protected. It's probably safer there, so it might be best to have him stay there. Flustered, Kraus tried to explain away Kinzo's silence. Battler, the game master, hadn't made Kinzo's death a major theme for this game, so the conversation didn't progress any further at this point. They stopped talking about Kinzo without Rudolph thinking anything was particularly suspicious. Anyway, we can't let the servants go unsupervised. I have already talked to Hideyoshi-san about this, but we've decided to split everyone into 2 rooms on the 2nd floor and hole up in there. Why 2 rooms? Wouldn't 1 room be more secure? Well, if you tried to stick 12 people in 1 room, they'd suffocate. It would also be best to isolate the people we need to keep a close eye on. There's Genji-san, the head of the servants, and Goda-san, the largest one there. And though he's just a kid, Kanen-san is a boy. I think we need to pay those 3 special attention, Aniki. This way we can isolate that group, and you and I can keep a close eye on them. With 2 guns, a pair of us could cooperate on a moment's notice. If they make even a single suspicious move, boom. I understand. Let's do that. But Rudolph, we cannot be certain that they are the culprits. Don't be too pushy. You're telling me not to be too pushy? We must be getting old. Right now, Hideyoshi-san is upstairs dividing everyone into the 2 rooms. We'll gather the ones being isolated in the cousin's room, and the others will go into the next room over. All right, Aniki, what about Jessica-chan? She insists on being in the same room as you. Jessica. We were planning to have 5 people in the cousin room and 7 in the next room over. If Jessica-san wants to go to the cousin room, it'll be split clean down the middle. If this was a wolves and sheep's puzzle, there are now 3 servant wolves and you 2 sheep in that room. If you add in Jessica-san, it'll be balanced out. For a while, Kraus crossed his arms and thought. The cousin room would surely be more dangerous, so he wanted his daughter to go in the next room over. However, in an emergency like this, he wanted to have his daughter where he could see her. Let's let her stay with us. We might need her there to make sure we remain good dads and uncles. Yes. At the moment, even I am only trying to act in a rational manner. But I can't guarantee that my sadness at losing my wife won't change to anger. Even without any physical evidence, the servants are certainly the most suspicious. During the long wait, the 2 men's weariness and anger and sadness might make them lose their reason and act out in anger. After thinking deeply, Kraus decided to accept Jessica's request, in part to prevent such a thing from happening. I think that's a good idea. I approve as well. I agree. It's enough that only Rosa and I lose children. Rudolph. In this way, all of the survivors except Kinzo split into 2 groups and holed up in 2 rooms on the guest house's 2nd floor. 1 group in the cousin room, Kraus, Rudolph, Jessica, Genji, Kanen, and Goda. 6 people. 1 group was in the next room over, Hideyoshi, George, Shannon, Kumasawa, Nanjo, and Erika. 6 people here too. Perhaps as the result of the killer's doing, the external phone line had been cut off, and they would have to wait for the ferry boat coming the next day before they could contact the police. However, the weather report said that the typhoon would make the ocean rough all the next day. When such a thing happens, the ferry boat takes the day off, so it would probably be 2 days before the boat came. In other words, they would need to spend a full 2 nights holed up in here. While Erica and the others held their planning meeting in the lounge, food and blankets had been brought in to prepare for the siege. The sudden tragedy had everyone on edge, but it was already well after 2 o'clock in the morning. If they really suspected the servants, then the observers couldn't afford to fall asleep at the same time. Either Kraus or Rudolph should probably take a nap right away. Not bad. Even without the detective's authority, you've managed to take control pretty cleverly. A man who's lost his cool is no different from an emotional dog. If you treat them properly, it's easy to control them. One of the benefits of the detective's authority was being able to take charge of the situation. Because of this, Erica, who was both a guest and a young girl, had been able to order a large number of adults around at will. However, she didn't have that power this time, so Erica had taken charge of making good use of her natural conversation skills and techniques for controlling men. The detective's authority is the same as magic. You can't do anything that's impossible for you. So I guess Erica was only acknowledged as such because she already had that much power. Magic is not something that is given to lazy or powerless humans. Right. On the contrary, people who can hide their great efforts are the ones we call witches. The absolute nature of the detective's authority can affect even magic. However, that convenient power probably hadn't been given to Erica easily. I probably have to acknowledge it, even if she isn't given a special power by the witch she serves. She's capable of quite a lot on her own. But Erica, why did you split them into 2 rooms? I figured you'd try to gather everyone into 1 room. I would have if I had the detective's authority. This is a move to preserve my right to investigate at will. Ah, is that it? I see. Not bad. Since Erica was being protected as a guest, it was hard for her to move about freely. In truth, she wanted to take some time and investigate the victims at the crime scenes at her leisure without being interrupted by anyone. She had already inspected the scenes once in a huge rush as she ran through the mansion, but that probably hadn't been perfect. However, they wouldn't have let a guest into the crime scenes, so she had no choice back then. She wanted some time to herself and freedom to investigate more, in part so that she could check the closed rooms and causes of death more closely. How is that related to splitting everyone into 2 rooms? Because she'll be able to trick them with it. Watch. Yes, that's the only reason I split them into 2 rooms. The cousin room was filled with a quiet tension. This room had 6 people, Kraus, Jessica, and Rudolph, and then the most suspicious ones, the male servants Genji, Cannon, and Goda, who had been forced to hole up in here. Jessica leaned against Kraus's shoulder, wrapped up in a blanket. She was drowsy, but apparently couldn't get to sleep. It was no surprise. In this bizarre situation, it would probably take some time before she could accept her mother's death. Cannon thought that this was the sort of time he should stay by Jessica's side, but that looked like it would be hard to do in front of Rudolph's intimidating glare. Rudolph stayed completely silent, but his inner emotions showed clearly in his eyes, so Genji, Cannon, and Goda didn't have to ask to realize that they were suspected. Sometimes Goda asked to help in an attempt to get on their good side and correct this misunderstanding, but it seemed to be having the opposite effect. The best option available to him was to stay quiet so that he didn't aggravate Rudolph and sit still at the end of the sofa. In the next room over, there were also 6 people: Erica, Hideyoshi, George, Shannon, Nanjo, and Kumasawa. The format of the room and the constricted atmosphere were the same as the cousin room, but even so, it was relatively calm there. George sat holding Shannon, who was darkly hanging her head the whole time. Kumasawa and Nanjo sat nervously as they listened to Hideyoshi explain the situation. We don't know how many enemies there are. However, we have guns with us, and of course, I've shot guns before. I'm not talking about the Hawaii shooting center here. It's been long enough that I can confess, but I once defiantly fired off one of them occupying forces' pistols. You see, back then, the black market was controlled by foreign gangsters. He probably wanted to make everyone feel secure by convincing them that he could be relied upon. Hideyoshi went into one of his old old stories that everyone had heard many times, and which had gotten more extravagant each time they'd hear it. It didn't make them any more confident in Hideyoshi's abilities, but it did seem to calm things down a little by bringing in a sense of normality. Why has a crime like this happened? I hope the boat comes tomorrow. That seems unlikely. It looks as though we'll be staying here for 2 nights. Now is a good time to get some sleep. Haha, my nerves aren't dull enough to let me sleep soundly in a situation like this. George-sama? The pain and anger of losing his mother quietly tormented George. Sleepiness probably wouldn't be coming to him for a while. Erika suddenly clapped her hands, as though she had just remembered something, then whispered in Hideyoshi's ear, interrupting the old story, which he had grown quite engrossed with. Sorry, I'm going to the cousin room for a second. There's one little thing I need to check on with the servants over there. Can't you use the phone? You just need to dial the room number. Oh, have you forgotten? It seems the culprit has broken the phones. Wait, you don't mean you found some kind of contradiction in their testimonies? Up until this point, Erika had spent a lot of time giving the impression that she behaved like a detective, so Hideyoshi immediately assumed that this was something vital to do with the crime. It'll be easy to check, but it might be a huge lead. I'll be back before long. Please don't let anyone leave this room. Even though it's the next room over, it's too dangerous to go alone. You sure you don't want to take someone with you? We can't trust the servants or Nanjo completely. You're in charge of this room. George-san is needed to support you. There's no one left. Don't worry, the detective never gets attacked. Until she does. Erika had already worked hard to look like a sharp, clear-headed person. Hideyoshi relaxed and agreed, thinking that it was just next door and wouldn't be a problem. After an hour, no, better not to wander around too much. I'll stay over there until morning. It'll be better if I wait until it gets light before I come back. Good thinking. You be careful now. Giggle. It's just a little trip to the next room over. Take good care of this room. Please don't let anyone go outside. We've already brought everything we need up here, so there's no reason for anyone to leave. Foods, drinks, blankets, medicine, towels, tissue paper, everything. The women also had their cosmetic pouches. They could last 48 hours without lacking for anything. I know. We aren't just here to protect ourselves. We're also on the lookout for the culprit if he's among us. I understand. Good. Goodbye, then. Where are you going, Erika-chan? We promised that no one would go outside. Oh, Erika-chan remembered something important she had to do. She's going to the next room over. Don't worry, she'll be fine. Hideyoshi suspected that Shannon might be one of the culprits. Since he also knew that Shannon and George had a special relationship, he apparently thought it would be prudent to mislead George about Erika's actions and motives. Hideyoshi slowly opened the door and checked both ways down the corridor, his gun raised. It's okay. No one's there. That's far enough. For all we know, Shannon-san might take George-san hostage as soon as you leave the room, right? It's careless even just showing your back to them as you're doing now. You're right. Then be careful. Tell me all about it later. Sure. Bye then. Erika closed the door, pushing Hideyoshi back inside. She then waited for the sound of the lock on the inside, and her smiling eyes opened wide. Her expression had become ruthless and intelligent. In this way, Erika was able to gain several hours during which all of the suspects were sealed up and she alone was free. Finally, I can investigate to my heart's content. But first, Ushiromiya Battler. Don't use my full name. Allow me to confirm the location of all characters' presence. Repeat it. Of course, I'm not obligated to respond, remember? If you don't, I'll just say that someone sneaked out while I wasn't looking, and that this person was responsible for the bizarre crimes that are sure to follow. If you want to show me an impossible murder, you should first confirm their locations. Sure, why not? I'll listen at least. Let me hear it. From now on, instead of repeating the barricaded room next to the cousin room, let's just say the next room over. Does that work for you? Sounds simple enough, got it. And when I check everyone's locations, as I'm about to, I am not concerned with whether they're alive or dead. Think of it as the location of their body, and of course, I'm referring to the current point in time. Here we go. The 6 first Twilight victims are located at the places where they were discovered. Natsui's in her room, Ava's in the VIP room, Kyrie's in the Krause's study, Rosa and Maria in the parlor, and you are in the guest room. Anyone ever play the game Clue or watch the movie? It had Tim Curry in it. Don't tell me you're already going to refuse. Don't worry, I acknowledge it. First off, it was acknowledged by the victims' locations were the same as the rooms that they had been shown of the Witch's Side's illusion. Good. I'll continue. Hideyoshi, George, Shandy, Kumasawa, and Nacho are in the next room over. Acknowledged. With that, the humans in the room Erica had just left had been specified, carefully checking even obvious things, like they're the most basic part of playing on the human side. Good. I'll continue. Everyone else is in the cousin room. The word everyone drew a slight reaction from Battler. The intuition he built up from all of his other previous games told him not to answer this one instantly. I refuse. Acknowledging that would mean that Kinzo's corpse would also have to be in the cousin room. Pardon me? It has already been shown that Kinzo no longer exists, so please remove him from the word everyone. Why are you using the word everyone for the cousin room alone? Why are you so vague when you could mention the names of Krause and the other 5 individually? It'd just be too much of a pain to read out all of their names. Or is there something wrong? Does using the word everyone create a problem with some trick of yours? If Battler had been told to repeat Krause, Rudolph, Jessica, Genji, Goda, and Cannon are in the cousin room, he would probably have acknowledged it with the red without thinking too much about it. Of course, normally Erica would have mentioned the names of everyone inside and had him repeat it precisely. Battler had paused, feeling some kind of unease because of the unexpected demand and the word everyone. Excluding Kinzo and me, there are 17 people on this island. 6 were killed and are lying in the mansion, and 5 are in the room over. And the remaining 6 are in the cousin room. That's a reasonable assumption to make, right? However, there are 17 people on the island, so if we subtract 6, then 5, then 6 again, we're left with 0 humans where locations have not been checked, but that sort of assumption would be extremely dangerous. I'm pretty sure that this sort of trick involving names and numbers of people caused you a lot of trouble with Nanjo's murder in the 3rd game. Good point. That trick worked because the 18 names given during match didn't match up with the 18 people who actually existed, leaving the room to add in an unknown person. Exactly, and so I can't feel secure just by checking their locations by name. That's why I used the word everyone. The word can prevent you from using a new trick that I haven't even thought of. I see. Pretty crafty of you. If Battler was planning a new trick where the names and numbers of the people would be used to create false alibis, like the murder of Nanjo in the 3rd game, even naming off all 17 people and checking their positions left a trace of uncertainty behind, and if he'd cleverly managed to slip somebody past the names and numbers of people. For example, let's say that an unknown Assassin X is hiding on this island. Let's call him Puro Pico Man. I see. Even if you list everyone's names and check their locations, this Puro Pico Man guy would fall outside the net. Precisely. Even hearing there are only 17 people on this island and here are the locations of 17 people is insufficient. There's already a precedent for this. However, the word everyone is just too broad. Can't you word it a little better? No, if you run away from the word everyone here, there's a chance that Eric will be able to use that as a basis for making Pico Man the culprit for everything. In my old fights with you, I also nailed several riddles with no basis other than the unknown 18th person X. The word everyone is significant. Make sure you think very carefully first. Erica wore a full but evil smile, confident that she had made a powerful move. Players on the witch side must eradicate all possibilities that would be possible for humans. If I don't crush any chance of the ridiculously named Puro Pico Man right now, he'll be used to explain everything the witch does. That was a move I liked to use in my old games with Beato. Back at the very beginning of the fight, my counterattacks were all based on the unknown 19th person X. Because of that, Beato had restricted the numbers of people on the island, making it necessary to eliminate any unknown person hiding somewhere. In that case, this time is the same. So just like Beato did, I need to get rid of any leeway in which that X can exist. The number of people on the island had already been announced, but since she's suspecting tricks involving names and numbers of people, saying the same thing again won't satisfy her. In that case, I have no choice but to respond to her demand and use the word everyone. That word has a disturbing ring to it. And though I haven't figured it out yet, it feels like there's some kind of demonic killer move hidden within it. Damn, after insulting Beato so much and saying that the witch side had a huge advantage, I'm getting this pressured just having to deal with a single line to repeat. Deflection, right? You mean the chess term? Yes, it's a technique of putting pressure on an enemy piece, forcing it to move, and making them weaken their own position. I'm threatening you with a broad and powerful piece called Everyone, pressuring you to move. With this, Battler-san will be able to perfectly guarantee alibis for all of the survivors, and it will probably make it possible for him to trap me in the later impossible crimes. What exactly are you afraid of? Shouldn't this be a powerful move for you? But it's a move that you're pressuring me to make. You're trying to make me weaken my own position in some way. No matter how good a move it seems, it's a bad move when it's what your opponent wants. However, it will be hard to avoid the word everyone here. The red truth can cut the weak reasoning of the human side apart over and over. In the past, I feared its ruthlessness. However, I also learned quickly that it could be used as a basis for a counterattack. Yes, the red truth is a trump card at Treasured Sword. Now I'm painfully aware of how Beato felt. It can kill with ease, but it's not something to be used unnecessarily. Using it carelessly will end up cornering the witch side instead. What will you do? We can put this on hold if you want. No. Okay, I acknowledge it. I acknowledge that everyone else is in the cousin room. Good. Thank you very much, Battler-san. Beautifully done. Oh, I'm in trouble. If a letter from the witch comes in this situation, just who could I suspect? She said she was in trouble, but her face didn't look troubled at all. On the contrary, she looked as though she had just succeeded in placing a huge opening move. In a witch's game, even a single mistake can be fatal. In both chess and shogi, you can't get a piece back once you've moved it. That last exchange had left a bad aftertaste, as though flesh had been torn and bones broken. That should be enough of confirming positions. Shall we continue the game? Yes, we shall. Lunar! Yes, Lady Erica. Let's get started right away. Let's use the privilege our merciful game master has given us. Yes, understood. Gertrude, Cornelia, use 2 rooms worth of 3 sets of seals we were given. Let it be known that we understand. Seal the cousin room and the next room over. With this, everyone's been sealed except for the victims. No matter what happens after this, the humans within the seals won't be a problem. By the seals on the doors and windows, the complete sealing of both the cousin room and the next room over has been guaranteed. For just an instant, a red longsword had returned into Lanor's hand. She had been given permission to draw it, thanks to the red truth that she'd finally gained. When the fight concerned these 2 sealed rooms from now on, Delanor would be able to use that merciless blade, the red key. This overwhelming power could slice even the game master in half. For a while, Erica and Delanor just grinned at each other, entranced by the ruthless red light that was burned into their eyes. Senior Aide, allow me to ask a question. What is it? The players on the human side are to interpret questions proposed by the witch as being the work of humans. You are not mistaken. If that is so, why are Lady Erica and Commander Delanor fighting to lower the number of humans who can commit crimes? Cornelia's question was a very simple one. Those 2 had made this move boldly, making it sound like it was a powerful one, almost as though it would greatly damage the witch. However you thought about it, Eric was just strangling her own neck. If we still don't know what sort of crime will occur in the future, would it not be more advantageous to the humans if there are more people whose locations are not specified? Know that now is not yet the time for Lady or the Commander to reveal their thoughts. I apologize for my idle chatter. Cornelia looked like she wasn't satisfied. In the previous game, when trying to help Kinzo escape from his study, Battler had desperately tried to break free from that closed room using various methods. As a result, Kinzo had escaped into the darkness of the night, and it had later been possible to treat him like an elusive phantom. In other words, closed rooms were advantageous to witches and disadvantageous to humans. Witches proposed closed rooms and humans destroyed and denied them. That should have been the standard tactic of this game, and yet Erica had created closed rooms herself, sealing a full 11 humans in them. In other words, this was the same as abandoning the right to use those 11 people when explaining all of the later tricks. In the past, Battler had confirmed the location of certain people, but that had been to check whether certain pieces existed with which he could break closed rooms, a completely different situation. Why had Erica taken these 11 people who were also her pieces and sealed them in a closed room? Cornelia hadn't experienced enough fights to understand this move, which looked as though they were trapping themselves. A disturbing move. What on earth is Erica planning? It isn't necessarily an attack. In chess and shogi, strengthening the guard around your king is an excellent strategy. In other words, the seals around those two rooms aren't an attack, but a guard. That seems likely. Thanks to that, it's hard to lay a hand on the survivors. It'll be tough to carry out the second twilight. Ah, I see. The witch side has an advantage when more riddles are presented. Yeah. After all, if even one riddle goes unsolved, the witch wins. Each new closed room we present increases our advantage. The riddles that the witch side sets up are equivalent to attacks. The human side must perfectly intercept all of those. It's almost like a penalty shootout, where letting a single point slip by means defeat. So the witch side wants to increase its number of attacks. The human side wants to lower the number of attacks. When Battler had fought on the human side, he hadn't thought of the survivors holding up in a room as being particularly useful. However, from the witch's side's perspective, this strategy was simple but effective. What made Beato incredible was how she'd bluffed and sneered at this tactic as though it was completely useless. On the inside, she must have been so worried over how to break down all of these barricades in each game. Right now, I'm sure of that. I see, so strengthening your guard to make it hard for a crime to occur is one way for the human side to fight. However, that's a simple move. The great detective Furuto Erica wouldn't have looked so confident after playing a move like that. Would Erica be happy after playing a defensive move? Though this move looks as though she's restraining herself, it's also extremely unlikely that Erica was playing defensively. I'm sure that this is an attack, not a move made for defense, though I don't know what kind of attack it is. Next is our move, What Shall We Do? For the moment, she has at least apparently spent her turn on strengthening her guard to stop the second twilight instead of reasoning about the first twilight. If they push, pull back. If they pull back, push. In that case, it's time for us to attack. But how should we attack? The guest house is well guarded. Yes, it appears as though the entire guest house is now under Erica's control. However, there are certain pieces like bishops and knights whose specialty is cutting behind enemy lines. Battler snapped his fingers and a single gold butterfly appeared from the darkness, then it flew in front of the chessboard, trailing gold sparks behind it. It landed without a sound, then transformed into a black piece representing the witch's darkness. X-ray! That's also a chess term. Yes, it's a high-level technique. It's when a square seems to be under an enemy's control, but you've spotted that your own piece actually have enough influence over it, so you attack. Erica, if you really believe that you can stop my next attack by sealing up all the survivors, that's just naive. Battler raised his new black piece high. His target was a single open space deep behind enemy lines. How will you handle it? This is my response. Now I can finally stretch my wings. First off, let's take a midnight stroll to the mansion. You would take a stroll in the middle of the night to an eerie mansion where a killer might be hiding. You must be very insane. Not at all. I worked so hard to get this time to myself, didn't I? It feels like free time after a swimming lesson. Now the burn castell was nowhere in sight. Erica was regaining her high spirits. She wasn't exaggerating when she said she was spreading her wings. Lunar knew that she was risking her own destruction in this game, and she was not in a favorable position by any means. Lunar could do nothing but assist Erica so that she could fight to the best of her abilities. All right. The locks on the first floor of the guest house are perfect. The entrance is sealed up with the chain lock. Before leaving the guest house, Erica did a check of the first floor, making sure that nothing was out of place. Then she found a flashlight and umbrella in the server room next to the entrance. Then, let's go. Yeah, we at least have to check the cause of death for all 6. She unset the chain, unlocked the door, and opened it. The freezing outside air poured in. It appears to be quite windy still. Well, this body is just a cage of flesh to me. I don't care if it gets wet or cold. Let's go. When Erica dropped her gaze to open her umbrella, she noticed something lying at her feet. Surprise noises! It's one of those, the usual letters. It was one of the letters sent by the witch with the seal of the one-winged eagle on it. It had been wedged onto the outside mat in front of the entrance, as though someone had predicted that Erica would eventually leave for the mansion by this way. It was in the shadows by the large eaves, so it had avoided the rain entirely. So, it's here already, almost as though it was waiting for me. She bent over and picked it up. She then tore it open recklessly and pulled the letter inside out of it. A message had been written in neat letters. "Welcome, Furudo Erica-sama," it says. Oh, so it's calling me by name. They totally saw this coming. What does it say? It's an advance notice for a crime. No, I should say it's a report after the fact. Apparently they have taken Ushiromiya Battler's corpse. It's basically saying, please try looking for it. So, this isn't the tear apart the two who are close of the second Twilight. Well, disappearing corpses happen a few times in Beato's games too. There's nothing really new about this. Erica shrugged and scorned the letter. However, this letter was a real attack. All the survivors were sealed in rooms on the second floor, and at the very end, after she had gone around with Kraus and the others to check the locks on the doors and windows, Eric had personally confirmed that there was nothing at this spot. So this was an attack saying someone who shouldn't be here placed the letter, and that someone was a witch. That was also an attack that the old Beato had often used. Ha, sheesh. If the way you show it is the same, please tell me that the actual trick isn't the same too. Delanor, please call Battler here. Understood! Lord Battler! We wish to take our turn. Got it. Let's have it. Sorry, I actually don't have a move to declare. Okay. The truth is, there's something I need to apologize for. Apologize? Battler and Beato's eyes went wide. However, though Erica said that she wanted to apologize, she had a confident look on her face, as though even that apology would be a new move. So Battler glared at her dubiously, without letting his guard down. It's about those retroactive seals. I actually already sealed one place. I apologize for taking so long to report this to you. You already sealed something. In other words, you already used up all 3 rooms worth. Yes, I promised that I'd report on it right away, but I completely forgot until just now, because I'm a bitch. You have my sincere apologies. You don't look like someone who's sincerely apologizing. Well, that's fine. I'm the one who gave you that privilege. So, what did you seal, Delanor? Allow me to report. Battler's guest room was sealed at the time of Lady Erica's inspection of the corpses. Blah, 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 blah. Beato tried not to let it show on her face, but her eyebrows twitched visibly, and her gaze flicked over to Battler. Normally, I would have liked to seal all the closed rooms, but I didn't have enough packing tape. Out of respect for the Game Master, I sealed only the room with Battler-san's corpse. So you were kind enough to close the lid on my coffin. I remembered a short while ago and was planning to tell you when we reached the mansion and investigated the guest room with your corpse in it. However, when this letter appeared, I figured I should report it right away." "Why did you think that?" "Well, after all, Battler-san has been playing this game ignorant of the fact that his corpse was sealed in the guest room. Because of that, I thought that it might possibly change things regarding the appearance of this letter. The cousin room and the next room over are currently sealed. Sorry for the late report, but the guest room with your corpse in it is also sealed. And there are 17 people on the island excluding Lady Erica. The existence of the 18th person has already been denied in a previous game. In that case, if we're thinking about some person who could have placed this letter and the disappearance of your corpse, I thought this might change things around a bit." Erica laughed crudely while staring into Battler's eyes to see if he was panicked or disturbed. "Battler-san? Battler-san?" Stay calm. Erica's just made her report a bit late. There's no need to lose your cool. Erica had suspected it since the beginning. It was possible the Battler actually hadn't been killed and was still alive. And if he was still alive, then the letter that had suddenly appeared was easy to explain, even though all of the survivors were sealed up. Judging by Beato's faint agitation, maybe Erica's guess had been right on the mark. Battler played dead and somehow got around Erica's examination, and then, while everyone was barricading themselves in the guest house, he snuck out of the guest room. After that, he placed a letter detailing the disappearance of his own corpse in the entrance to the lobby and hid himself. If that was the truth, then the seals that had been placed on Battler's guest room at the time of Erica's examination were now very significant. In other words, if this was the trick they'd used, then Battler would certainly have broken the seals when he left his guest room. The trick would not be workable without breaking the seals. Since the survivors were all sealed up inside the guest house, then if the seals on the guest room were broken, it meant acknowledging that at least one of the victims was actually alive. If Battler had known about the seals earlier, it was likely that he would have advanced the game in a different way to avoid this. In other words, it was very likely that an announcement about the seals would have had a large effect on the rest of Battler's game. Eric was saying if Battler avoided breaking the seals because he was pretending to be a corpse and instead remained inside the guest room, perhaps this letter would not have appeared in the story. If Battler was actually alive and had placed the letter there, then now that Erica's seals had come into play, there was a chance that his trick would cause a contradiction somewhere down the line. That sort of contradiction is called a logic error. A logic error? I think we heard about that really early on in this story. It's a violation of the rules, the greatest and worst form of error which the witch side must avoid making. Yeah, I remember. It was something about the two sides of the tale not matching and creating a contradiction. Do you remember the magic for making candy appear inside an overturned cup? Yeah. Maria, One-chan, and Erica were fighting about that. Apparently that was just a simple trick where someone slipped the candy into the cup while One-chan had her eyes closed. That's right. Since Maria did not observe the process of the trick and was only given the result, she accepted the illusion of magic that the candy had appeared by the magic inside the cup and the magic was established. Okay, so a logic error would be a trick that has become impossible. If you think about it, Erica and Maria's fierce red and blue truth battle over this magic was the real opening of this tale's fight. Let's try to remember that exchange. The heartless truth was that it had all been a trick, making the candy appear in a cup by magic but nothing more than Beato's claim. Magic can only do things that one can accomplish. In other words, you can only have a magical result if it's something that could have been done without magic. Let's be clear. There are two general types of magic. If you summon giants and make towers grow from the ground, but when the lid is taken off, nothing has happened in the rose garden, that's one type of magic. That's just an illusion. It's a lie with no observers that takes place where the witch says it did, in a location without any of the anti-magic toxin. Magic that doesn't have to match a result is the most simple kind of a lie. This is the same as a worthless delusion, an illusion, or a daydream. Even Battler saw through it partway through the third game. Then there is another kind, which we might call true magic, magic that matches a result. The cup trick is an example of magic that matches a result, since an observer actually checks to see the cup's contents were empty before seeing a candy appear there, and thus an actual observer of the incident is created. I've discovered one big rule, that magic matching a result has to follow, unlike the magic of illusions. The rule is that only the unobserved process of what you accomplish can be transformed into magic. I can speak even more generally and ruthlessly. In short, all forms of magic are tricks. Only things that can be accomplished without magic can have a matching result. Ironically, this also proves that magic doesn't actually exist, but out of respect for the witch's game, let's call it making the games solvable and fair for the human player. So, instead of the candy inside the cup, we now have this mysterious letter that appeared in front of Erica. They have to be tricks. By claiming that the witch side set the letter there with magic, Oni-chan is trying to create magic that matches a result. Correct. Since all of the survivors are sealed within the closed rooms of the guest house, it is possible to embellish this suddenly appearing letter and say it was curious a bit of magic, for only a witch could have placed it there. But even so, it must be possible trick in the end. In order to see through the trick with the candy in the cup, Erica had countered with the blue truth, saying that the candy had been stuck in there while her eyes were closed. That was the correct answer, so Maria hadn't had any red that she could use. But what if she had used it? For example, what if Maria had used the red truth, then to say, until I lifted up the cup, the closed room of the overturned cup remained intact? The red truth can only be used to refer to the truth, right? If you could lie with it, it'd be a massive violation of the rules. Yes, denying your own trick with the red truth is a major violation of the rules. However, if you instantly switch over to another trick that doesn't violate the red truth, it may be slightly unfair, but the red truth can be acknowledged. So in this case, the witch side would need to immediately propose another trick that doesn't contradict the red truth, stating that the closed room inside the cup was preserved. Like the excuses of a politician when he keeps backtracking on new evidence is shown to him. Yes. Well, for a red like this, she might be able to get away with some painful excuse. Maybe there was some device in the table, or maybe it was a trick cup with a fake bottom. But if those possibilities had been denied beforehand, this would not be valid. The more red truths there are, the harder it is to talk your way out. In actuality, the candy had been put in the cup while Maria's eyes were closed. However, if when Erica saw through that, Maria had used the red truth to say that the closed room of the cup had been preserved, the witch would have to rush and revise the scenario to a new trick that still worked logically after that new red. Revising the scenario is an unfair move that would never be allowed in the mystery genre. However, the very act of revising the scenario takes place inside the witch's head, which is an unobservable world. So, if she claimed that she had been using the trick with the fake bottom cup from the beginning, no one could deny it. So, even if it really was a trick done while Oni-chan's eyes were closed, as long as the witch leaves herself a way out, she can even switch between tricks, rather than calling this an action available to witches. Now, of course, it is possible, like in real life, to have real magic, but at the same time, that's not the point of the game. The point of the game is you have to make something in a way that actually is possible to do without magic, but you have to do it in a way that's not understood by your opponent, so that you can claim it's magic. But you have to have some logical, so at the end of the game when you said, okay, I win, you lose, and the game is called a draw, you can actually then explain how the trick was done. It's kind of like someone, like, you're giving a riddle, and the person eventually says, okay, I give up, I can't solve the riddle. You can't be like, okay, there's no answer to the riddle. Then you're a jerk then. It's not how you play games. Rather than calling this an action available to witches, we should probably say that it's only usable by the game master, the one who creates and writes. But even so, the new truths must not contradict any of the previously stated red truths. If the red truths make it so that the trick no longer makes logical sense, then there will be a mismatch between the two sides of the story, the illusory result that the game master claims is magic, and the true result that was brought about by the trick. So when we get a contradiction, and it no longer makes logical sense, we call it a logic error, and that would mean the destruction of the witch's game. This world is a game that's possible to explain with humans. In other words, it must be possible for all magic to have been done by tricks as well. If it's impossible to do with tricks, then the human side has no move and we get a stalemate. No, not quite. That's where we get the fatal and horrible violation known as a logic error. When the witch side does this, the game is instantly destroyed and they suffer a fatal defeat. Erica has probably seen through to Oni-chan's trick. Without the detective's authority, she couldn't properly perform a proper examination of the corpses. Because of that, he continued to play dead, snuck out of the guest room and placed the letter at the entrance to the guest house. However, because Battler was so overly gracious in giving out those retroactive seals, things went wrong. Stupid Oni-chan. The current situation still does not warrant panic. It still hasn't been specified with Red Truth that the seals around the guest room are intact. He is free to break those seals. If he doesn't, then he can probably have it so that someone other than Battler was alive and swap them in as the person who placed the letter. That's right, it's not just Oni-chan. The other corpses haven't been specified as dead by the red yet. So far, there wouldn't be any problem if they were all faking. True, this is far too soon for them to get flustered. All he has to do is change his move so that Erica's seals and the placement of the letter don't contradict each other, and the revising the plot without contradictions is one of the moves available to the Game Master. However, taking a scenario one has imagined and revising it partway through can sometimes create flaws in the tale. It would be a very regrettable move to make when the first Twilight has only just ended. It would seem that Battler was the one with an enemy piece moved deep behind his lines. This hidden piece will probably cause him pain and discomfort with each step from now on, like a pebble caught in one's shoe. This single pebble might kill Battler. This still isn't quite a logic error, and though we sealed the room retroactively, we are at fault for the lateness in reporting it, so I have no problem with letting Battler-san retroactively rewrite the plot concerning this letter. Retroactively rewrite the plot? Humph, I see. If I placed the letter there, then that would have become impossible as soon as I was sealed in that room, closed room, in which case this letter shouldn't have appeared there. Correct. So I thought you should have the chance to revise this small inconsistency. We just now discovered this letter here. We are saying that we do not mind if you want to undo that or if you want to use a revised scenario just by the existence of the letter and the packing tape. This sort of move is possible for Furuto Erica. What do you think, everyone? Damn, what a dirty move. Well, what else should I expect from Erica? I made a promise to Lanor too that we'd both play all out and mercilessly. Yeah, it's true. I'd been planning to make Battler actually alive, and then to have him slip out from the guest room, resulting in his disappearance and in the placement of the letter. However, if I revise the scenario now that my move's been spotted, it'll be the same as admitting that it was spotted. Even if I have to be stubborn about it, I don't want to admit that I was seen through here. I don't want to acknowledge a pathetic plot change, where I try to sneak out of the guest room and break the seals. I want to change over to a different trick so that the letter will be placed and my corpse hidden, while still preserving the seals on the guest room. It doesn't really have to be me who places the letter. I can still revise the logic without contradictions. But Battler-san, even if you can place the letter somehow, how are you going to make your corpse vanish afterwards? The guest room is sealed. If you don't find a trick to erase the corpse in the closed room right now, a logic error will occur. I still have time. Let me think until the last second. Damn it. With a painful laugh, Battler unconsciously scratched at his head. Anyway, we'll leave the letter like this. I can't say, oh, sorry about that, having the guest room sealed makes a big contradiction, so I'd like to revise my move. It would mean acknowledging that she caught me. Heh. I feel like a ninja hiding above the ceiling. Even though I was noticed and stabbed by a spear, I just withstand the pain. I wipe the blood from the spear and act as though nothing happened. False courage works well enough. I can't let her know that this one hurt. Battler-san. Hey, Beato, do you know what my face looks like now? I'm sure it's the same expression you had when I managed to hit you where it hurts in the past. Damn it. Beato couldn't think of anything to say. Useless words of comfort would only get in the way of Battler's thinking now. What would the old you do? The old you who created all of those closed rooms that tormented me so much in the past. What kind of trick would she use to erase my corpse from a closed room? Then Beato trembled and groaned. The old her had been an expert at closed-room tricks, and if only that memory, that power could be revived, she would be able to help Battler. There's still time to think. There's still time. Nice going, Erica. That was a dirty move. The entrance to the mansion was locked, but Erica had a master key, so she opened it without any trouble. She had gotten Kraus and the others to take the master keys from the servants, and at the time she had used a little sleight of hand to pilfer one of them. Well